A former Parkersburg South High School teacher is facing up to 10 years in prison after pleading guilty to charges of sexual abuse. Dwain Sponseller entered an Alford plea to 2 counts of sexual abuse in the first degree yesterday in the Wood County Circuit Court, according to the clerk of Judge J.D. Bean. Under an Alford plea, the defendant denies their guilt but acknowledges that there is enough evidence that going to trial would likely result in a conviction. Sponseller's trial was set to begin on Monday. Sponseller faces 1 to 5 years for each of the felony counts. He was indicted on 16 counts in 2024, including 7 other counts of sexual abuse in the first degree and 7 counts of sexual abuse by a parent, guardian, or custodian. He was suspended without pay from his position at Parkersburg South High School shortly after he was indicted in 2024. According to Wood County School Superintendent Christy Willis, an addendum will be added to the personnel's agenda of tonight's Board of Education recommending for Sponseller's termination. Sponseller's sentencing is scheduled for July 24th at 9 a.m.